Yesterday, Say Technologies opened up its Palantir Q2 2021 earnings Q&A for the conference call. You'll see here right now, as of Friday, there are 13 days left until the conference call. And that is because Palantir did confirm its earnings will be happening on August 12th and in the pre-market with a earnings call at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. So in this video, I want to go through a few of the top questions and share my thoughts on whether they are a good use of the opportunity to be asking Palantir management questions, since this can only happen quarterly. I'll share my questions with you and leave the links in the description if you wish to upvote them yourself, as well as a few questions that I can't help but laugh at. So without further ado, let's get into what questions I think it is critical for Palantir to answer. Let's go. So here we are at the top of the list, 120 votes right now. When does Palantir expect to report positive GAAP EPS? Now, I think this is a fair question. I have very strong feelings about what questions should be towards the top here and which ones Palantir should spend time focusing on. Short-term focus questions are really not worth the time, and we want to get a better sense of the core business and the progress made by Palantir. So I do think this is a fair question, a good look into the financials with an answer to this one. And we have someone asking why there's been a significant increase in insider trading recently. I think that's a complete waste of a question. Almost all insider selling, as it were, is automatic and predetermined. This is a good one. How does Palantir plan to increase contribution margin across its product platform? Getting at if there's a more cohesive strategy for improving the contribution margin. I do like that one. It seems that not many analysts understand what Palantir does. Are there any plans for the company to increase its PR presence, to increase awareness of its business model, which may lead to increased utilization of Palantir's various software platforms? Now, I think that's a fair question. I asked a variation of that below, and you'll see that my questions, I didn't really get them in soon enough. I do think I asked mine in a more important way, not to disparage this one, because I do agree with what this one's getting at. Will Palantir continue to invest in SPACs following the recent investments in Sarcos and Lilium? What portion of free cash flow will be allocated towards this? We know Palantir is going to continue investing in SPACs. Maybe this person was unaware that they have invested in many more after Sarcos and Lilium being the first two. So that's a waste of a question, but having this follow-up here is sort of interesting, and I think we can kind of figure this out ourselves. It would be nice to hear an explanation of what they're looking for allocations, but again, not a very pressing issue. I think there could be a better question to be answered there. What, if anything, is Palantir doing to increase its footprint in cybersecurity? I'm not really sure what that's getting at. Do you see Foundry having an impact on the construction industry? I work for a commercial construction company and can imagine how its capabilities and interface would complement the industry well. Logistics, inventory, material lead times, price, etc. Now, this is a little too specific, I think, but not a bad question, and I wonder if Palantir has anything planned in this arena. Are you satisfied with the number of new customers in the last quarter? It's good what this question's getting at, but it kind of fails to ask something meaningful. Because of course they're going to say yes, but they need to explain why. It's justifiable that they're saying yes, but also why they're striving for more. I'm not really sure what this one's saying about IBM communicating with Palantir on its impact for Cloud Pak for Data, because Palantir is part of Cloud Pak for Data. That's the partnership. So I think that person's trying to get at what financial impact Palantir's partnership has had on IBM, which I doubt they will disclose. This question, oh no. What percentage sales reps are fully ramped? When do you expect to see meaningful revenue contribution from reps hired in 2021? I would like to hear an update on their sales force and how that's going, where they see it headed in the future. So I wouldn't mind them talking to this as a question or at another point in the conference call or the earnings slide deck. All right, and this is where I start to get very frustrated with what questions are getting upvoted. It's not just that one of these questions is getting asked, but rather that it's getting asked and also people are upvoting it, because it's very rare that you get to ask management very specific and direct questions for which they are required or have said they will answer. And I'm very glad that Say Technologies exists, and also also that Palantir has partnered with them so that they can answer our questions as retail investors. That being said, those questions need to be meaningful. Those questions need to be worthwhile. And asking if there are any plans for a stock buyback of PLTR stock since the stock has been rather soft lately is absolutely ludicrous. I'm not even going to get into it, other than to say they're issuing stock to employees. They're not going to buy back the stock. Not at this point. That's for established companies to do. This one drives me crazy as well. Are there any potential investors or partnerships? What does that even mean? If it's not something they can disclose, it's not something they can disclose. I think investors would have to be disclosed, but partnerships, you'll see my question on that in a second. What is leadership sentiment regarding the recent criticism of PIPE investment for foundry contact model? Many see this as paying for customers. I've actually never heard this criticism before. I think it's fairly interesting one. Easily dismissed. Sure, you can say Palantir is investing in these companies even before they're using Foundry, but I think it's more of a simultaneous thing where they're using Foundry and concurrently Palantir wants to invest in them because of that. They're not investing in the company before the SPAC or whatever. Yeah, the SPAC in this case is actually using the product. Definitely not paying for customers in my opinion, but definitely a question that made me think because I had never heard of this before, so good one. All right, so here are my questions labeled as Jackson K. Now, naturally, I believe these are very good questions, but I am biased, so upvote them if you agree with me, upvote others if you don't. But I submitted 3 questions. I said, can you speak to what investors can expect for future events? When is the next installment of DoubleClick happening? When and for how long will Alex Karp continue his interview series? Are there plans for executives to take more interviews and continue to be publicly accessible? So I try and pack a lot into my questions. They give 280 characters. I try and tackle one theme. So this is pretty much trying to get at why we haven't seen any more DoubleClick events, how much more Alex Karp will step into the limelight with interviews, and if potentially they'll do any of the executives really do any more interviews and be publicly accessible. So I really like this one as a way for management, anyone who answers this, to explain the theory behind the events. And I think any investor can really get behind this question because we want progress. Investor events are an absolutely great way of doing that. Here's my second question. It has been explained before that certain clients wish to keep their use of Palantir Foundry private information. Can you speak to the motivation for that, but also how frequent such non-disclosure has been and the nature of such companies that wish to keep anonymous whilst using? Personally, I love this one because I'm trying to get at the idea of a rumored partnership with Tesla. I know some people just hate that idea, so just ignore me here. Either that or other, we know there are companies using Foundry that haven't been disclosed, so I want them to talk about this. Of course, they're not going to disclose these companies, but I want them to kind of explain more about the non-disclosure and what sorts of companies these are. I think that is a killer question. I really hope they do speak to this. Okay, so now I'm just going to scroll down to my last question, or actually, let's just take a look at Jake Yu, friend of the channel. He says, would Palantir Technologies be willing to create presentation templates targeted to different industries so employees can pitch Foundry and Gotham to decision makers using the information you found to be useful while communicating with government and commercial customers? Create presentation templates so employees can pitch Foundry and Gotham to decision makers. So basically it looks like what he's getting at is more targeted, not necessarily marketing, but outreach. So I'm all for Palantir getting better at explaining what they do, and these templates seem like a good idea, being focused on different industries so that it's much easier to pitch, as he says, the product and the platform. So I'm all for that. And here's another one by Jake, then I'll get to my last question. Are forward deployed engineers required for Foundry for Builders? And if not, what level of expertise is required within a company to begin utilizing the program? This is an amazing question. I do not have the answer, and I really hope Palantir explains. And here's my last question. Can you comment on any future plans for a commercial product? Does Palantir see this as a natural progression down market from B to large B to smaller B to B to C ultimately? Can you speak to the TAM expansion in that capacity, perhaps not originally outlined in the S1? So I thought this was a good question. I know some people are very skeptical of a consumer product, don't even want to hear it mentioned, which is fine. That's perhaps why it's not getting upvoted as much. If they do end up answering this question, even though it's lower $1 down, I think that would be awesome. So those are my thoughts on Palantir Q&A we've got coming up in the next 2 weeks. Not trying to disparage anyone individually for their questions. I just think as a shareholder, I am very much invested emotionally and financially in the success of this company, so I want to see good questions being asked. This is not my official earnings preview video. That one is in the works, but Palantir earnings season is definitely almost upon us, so I'm very excited for that. Anyway, if you want to upvote any of these, you can head to saytechnologies.com and find Palantir. I'd very much appreciate it you upvoting mine if you found them helpful, and we'll see if they can't answer a few. More content on the way. Until next time.